was debating where to go next. Well, let's talk to... Does she have a first name? Mrs. Green had pleaded with me at the police station. I hoped she would be more helpful than she had the previous day. I love this job, he told me as we turned the corner of Polkenbush Streets. Used to work in a plant across the bay with my two brothers. You know how boring that gets. Bang this, push that. What a life. We weren't made for factories. Sure, they get paid more, they're part of a union, they have good pensions, but they can't beat this, he said, revving his engine. Such freedom. We spoke about his love of the open road until we reached my destination. I came upon the greenhouse and knocked on the door. This time, Mrs. Green opened it quickly. Miss Malone, she panted, with noticeable shock in her eyes. I'm just frightened about people knocking at my door. The door that you left unlocked last time I was here? Oh, I see now, she said by way of explanation. After everything what happened to my husband, everything feels so cold. Oh, I'm blabbering. Please come inside. She led the way to 2 chairs and we sat down. She was more awake than the previous day, but her hair was a bit tousled and her S's hung in the air long enough to belie her lack of complete sobriety. Have you found anything about my husband's killer? She asked. Have we? What? I shook my head and replied that there was nothing definitive just then. I said I would need to ask her some questions that might spark the investigation. She straightened in her chair and replied with, Certainly. Well, yeah, let's ask about all the stuff we couldn't ask her about before. I glanced at the coat that hung on the rack. Where did you get this? I asked. Her unfocused eyes moved to the gray trench. Connor brought it home one day. It was too small for his frame, but I thought it looked swell on me. Seems built for a man, I said. Sure, but it's the freedom age, darling. We can wear anything or even nothing at all. You're a jazz singer at the Tin Spoon, I asked. She gave a languid nod. I wondered how she'd started singing. So I asked about her roots. Well, she started, Papa never liked the petting parties or the liquor or the young men in the roadsters, but he never made a fuss about it, not till I started to sing. That's enough to get a girl disowned. I suppose I was a teenage prima donna looking for attention, she sighed. You never liked singing? I questioned. Oh, but I love it, she said as she breathed in a smile. The lights, the shining dresses, the dancing, it's all marvelous. And for a young girl craving attention, there's no better cure than the spotlight. Her face beamed. I suppose I understood that. I nodded and changed the subject back to the case. No, we're going to talk about you some more, just so that I don't miss anything. Oh yeah, why were you following me? How did you end up at Southern Coffee yesterday? I asked her. I told you, I followed Connor to your apartments. I became furious when I saw he was calling on another woman. And why were you shadowing your husband to begin with? I pressed. Oh, that, she stuttered slightly. Well, I heard rumors that Connor might have been unfaithful. I discovered they were baseless, but, well, a wife never truly knows. That's why I followed you all the way to Southern Coffee. I had to know the truth, Miss Malone. We haven't gotten to, Tiny Paul yet, so my throat actually isn't too bad. Your husband received a threatening letter, I told her. That's why he came to me. She sobbed. I know, the police told me the details this morning. That Connor had gotten a letter that he had begun bootlegging again, and that he thought a man named Redstone Staple was after him for it. It seemed they had told her everything. I turned the conversation to a different angle. What were you doing last night? I asked. Her expression was surprised, but I told her that I just need to place everyone in their locations, Mrs. Green, to get a full picture of the evening. Of course, she said. Let's see. I was singing with the band. The show ended at about 10 o'clock. Then we went up into the billiard hall. Oh, it haunts me that Connor was so close when he was killed. She winced. But none of us heard anything, with how loud we were and how sealed that building is. How late were you in the pool room? I asked. Until early in the morning, say 2 or 3. I nodded and moved on to further questions. Oh god, this is I'm gonna have to stay sharp on this, aren't I? Okay, well, tell me more about this. It seems your husband was from St. Louis, I put to her. She squirmed but said nothing, so I pressed her. Mrs. Green, I'm investigating his death. You're right, she sighed. He had told me he was from out east, though he lied to everyone else. He claimed he had to flee from his past. I never asked the details, so that's all I know, and you're the first person I've told. He also had 2 train tickets. Oh, he also had 2 train tickets to get there, I continued. He wanted to return? Well, those tickets have no date printed on them. She paused, looked back at me from underneath long lashes, and continued. He was thinking of going back there. I guess whatever trouble he had was blown over. But I refused. I told him I wanted to stay in San Francisco. Whenever Connor and I quarreled, a sharp, wavering inhale cut off her sentence. Well, he kept them around to brandish, to show me that he loved me, and that he stayed here only for me. I nodded, and we spoke about something else. She knows about this, right? The letter that your husband received had a black hand on it. That hand, I explained, is a symbol of the notorious Black Hand Gang. Mrs. Green's eyes went wide. Yes, but, I continued, it was a fake. The Black Hand doesn't run this far west. So who wrote it then? She asked. I told her that I thought her husband had written the letter and that I thought his bootlegging scheme was a bust. He also had those tickets to St. Louis. I think his plan was to fake his death and use me as cover while running back home. She sighed. I don't know about his dealings, Malone. Leave her be. I nodded my thanks for her answers, then turned back to the room. Oh yeah, let's ask about her dead plant. Why don't you take care of your poor plant? Wilting plant? I pointed at the wilting flower. It's a struggle to keep any plant alive, I said. Yes, but I can't say no to yellow chrysanthemums. They are so warm, brighten up the entire room. Well, I still have some tea left. Let's go to the Tin Spoon and talk to him. I rapped my knuckles on the same metal door. Instead of the usual dark eyes, the door swung open to reveal Fred Grant. Oh! He let out a "Peachy, good seeing ya," with more whiskey on his breath than a fire breather. Giving him like a Sean Connery, because he's sexist. He again tried to stand upright. Failing at that, he stumbled to his police car, got behind the wheel, let the sirens loose, and drove the machine around the corner. Good idea. I continued up the stairs to find a similar scene as the day before, only Tiny Paul had been replaced by a young woman, idly playing with a deck of cards scattered across the billiards table. Oh! The balls were gone from the billiards table. In their place were some betting chips and cards strewn across the felt. I counted 5 aces, 2 aces of hearts. And the cues are all back in place. Didn't it hold 5 cues back when Tiny Paul was here holding one? Or no, I can't remember. I could see the tears welled in the girl's eyes. I studied the young woman and looked her up and down. I studied her face. She was in her early 20s and was naturally pretty, with deep eyes, shimmering black hair, and big rouged lips, though holding back tears somewhat twisted her face. Who are you? I just walk into this room that she's already occupying and demand answers. Who are you? I asked. She said in a clear, strong voice, I'm Ella Smith. I work nights as a backing singer, she added in a more delicate tone. But, well, last night I had a bit too much of the cider. The whole band was here, playing a long game of poker and singing after work. I wondered if she had been in the billiards room since the previous evening. Perhaps she didn't want to talk about her night. It might embarrass a young woman. But I had to know the story. And you're still here? I asked her. I'm gonna give her Fanny's voice. I came to this morning. A blush interrupted her before she continued her thought. I was laying on the pool table when I heard a cop banging on the metal door. I asked about Grant, changing the subject from her drinking. I think she appreciated that. He was curious about the shooting outside last night. You know, a man died. But I didn't hear a peep. I don't think we could have heard anything through all that racket. I realized she was related to the Green case, at least partially. I had to pump her for information. Ella Smith. Yeah. Do you remember about 3 a.m.? Nobody threw pool hall entrance last night. Green was killed around midnight, I told her. Do you remember anything from then? She turned red in an instant. Midnight was the time I sang all by myself to the crowd up here. How do you know it was midnight? I asked. Well, last New Year's Eve at exactly midnight, me and Lil Fanny, you know, our lead, did a swell duet for the boys. They wanted to hear it again, but she wasn't around to sing it, so I did it alone. She wasn't here, you say? At midnight? She lied. Lil Fanny wasn't around, I asked. But the doorman says nobody from the billiards room left the joint. Ella shrugged. Maybe she was in the toilets. I didn't go looking for her. Look, I never get to sing lead. They don't like us Chinese girls doing that, so I took my chance. How could I turn it down? She asked. Well, anyhow, after that song is when I really down some gin. Oh, after that song is when I really down some gin. Why could I not parse that sentence? I didn't much like it, but they said it was good for me, and I was riding high with everyone watching. I don't remember much after that. I thanked her for the tip. So you claim you were in here at midnight? I asked. That's right, she said. I nodded and asked her about something else. She was holding back tears, sure. I said I noticed she'd been crying and asked her why. Her lower lip wavered, but she managed to stop it before any tears could get through. It's that copper who was just here. He kept wanting me to feed him drinks, and the more I put in him, the more fresh he got with me. She heaved a sigh. It's not your fault, I said. Of course it isn't, she exclaimed. All men are brutes, but I can't exactly slip away from a copper. Anyhow, I'm just frantic because of the booze. I'm sure it'll wear off. She turned her gaze back to the cards on the table. She was putting up a strong mask, but I could tell something about Granson's interaction had rattled her. The truth is, most women wear a mask in public. Almost every one of us has a story about being mistreated, or worse. Me too. What else do you want to know? What? I can't remember her voice. I instantly forgot it. Q-Rack? Yeah, no. It specifically says 5, so like is it a red herring, or am I supposed to be concerned about this? Oh, cards? Because she's playing with cards. Those cards you're fiddling with, I said. Are they the same ones that the boys were playing with last night? She said they were. Okay, let her alone. I turned back to the room. Oh, there was, 2 2 other things in my notes that she had said, right? Yeah, that Fanny wasn't here and that she's Chinese. I'm not sure why that is relevant to the case. Okay. Why is that in here?
Time to accuse Mrs. Green.
Hey, Fanny.
Where were you?
Wahaha.
Objection!
One of your backing singers claims you left the upstairs room before midnight, I said from my notes. That's not true, she said defiantly. I was there the entire evening. She seemed quite sure, Mrs. Green. She sang to the drunken boys without you there. But I asked our doorman, Miss Malone. He says nobody left the upstairs room. You're doing your own digging? I asked. She blushed. I just have no confidence in the police. Anyhow, if nobody came from upstairs, that must eliminate anyone in the pool room. I must have been in the restroom if Ella is certain I wasn't with him at that exact time, because I could not have been outside. Okay. She had a point. I moved on to further questions. Did we learn anything? Nope. Okay. I'm gonna go ask Ella. Do you know where Tiny Paul might be?
Where is Tiny Paul?
I asked. I need to see him. Paul's likely as tired as I am. After the band finished downstairs, we all came up to play poker. Paul and the boys were at it the entire night, so I assume he's at home. I asked if she knew where Paul's home was, and she shook her head. No, Paul and I aren't close. Oh God, every statement is gonna have this contradict option, and I'm, like, gonna accidentally hit it one of these times. Just ruin everything. Southern coffee. Not yet. Let's talk to Stable first. Because at least now Ella and Fanny are connected, but, so they can kind of build off of each other. But I just don't know what hints to ask him. Oh, you're sitting in your own chair. Oh, there was a man seated in the barber chair, tapping his foot and staring at me. I didn't see Stable anymore. If he's not here, what are you doing here getting a haircut? Ah, another voice, great. He stared at me with a grin that extended to his eyes. He was wearing a barber's cape, which told me he was here for a haircut. I wondered why Stable had left this man mid-trim. Because he saw Malone coming, maybe? I asked how he was doing. Swell, he answered. Yes, very swell indeed. Thank you, miss. His words came out as jovial as his expression. They held a slight and affable southern tint. A few more pleasantries returned, equally verbose responses with no meat to them. It piqued my interest, a stranger in Stable's chair with no sign of Stable around. Who are you? I asked with genuine curiosity. I am merely a mortal man enjoying my life at this very moment, he replied, looking me up and down, and there is much to enjoy. I heaved a sigh in response. Last night's headache hadn't fully disappeared, making me too tired to play any of his games. He frowned slightly. I am merely paying a compliment, he said. You modern girls and your stockings all knotted whenever someone calls you pretty. I'm not apologizing for that. I asked again. Who are you? My name is Ray Carter, regular Jaws bassist. Yes, this is an appropriate voice. The Tin Spoon Lounge. Though I suppose any lady with an attitude like yours never gets around to speakies. He worked at the Tin Spoon. That surprised me. Were you there last night? I asked. Until early morning, he gleamed. I happened to be swimming. I happened to be winning a nice bucket of change at the poker table. Just about everyone was saying they never saw someone play cards so well, but I suppose you don't gamble either. I let the jab go and wondered if he was at all related to this case. He plainly disliked my demeanor. I thought that answers might be hard to get from him. He saw me taking notes and asked, Are you some sort of continental operative? When I nodded, he let out a whistle and said, Oh, I'm a detective. Well, that is almost as swell as the black man in a white man's barber chair. Is it seriously gonna put a note that he's black? No. Okay, good. I was about to say, like, relevance to the case, please. Good lord. Oh! Yeah. How much did you win last night? I asked him. Oh, a heap of it, he grinned. And how many aces did it take you to get there? His face contorted to somewhere between surprised and frown. And how many aces did Tiny Paul think were in that deck? I poked further. Now you look here, he growled. Tiny Paul is mean-spirited, no-good, black-hating son of a bitch. He pays us pennies but wants us to be good and smile for him. Well, I am not having that, miss. No, I am not having that at all. Yes, I took him for a ride, and I feel no remorse for it. In some ways, it is all part of the game. I said that was all right, but Tiny Paul might see it differently. Oh, no, you would not tell him, would you? He pleaded. Oh, I might have to, I said. He sighed. What is it you want, miss? Surely you must want something. I was glad he knew. Oh, I was glad he knew the score. I want to know where Stable is, I told him. Stable was here, congenial and unhurried. Then he received a telephone call and said he had to check on something at his Tanfrin racetrack. He told me to just sit tight until he returned, and here we are. So Stable had gone to his horses. Another lead that we need chasing. Oh, so that's why he has so much money. You know, he continued, I bet I had no reason to cheat last night, not with the way Ellie kept distracting him. Yes, he was very distracted indeed. Oh, Ella told us she didn't know him well. I raised a questioning brow. Ella Smith and Tiny Paul have something going on? That girl throws herself onto him like she'd throw water on a fire. I noted that, then changed our subject of conversation. Do you know where Paul lives? I am sorry, miss. I know nothing about that. Oh, yes. Green died around midnight, I put to him. I was inside all night with the band and Tiny Paul playing poker. We heard no shots in that racket. Ella Smith tells me Lil Fanny wasn't in the billiards room at midnight, I put to him. I remember her being there at the beginning and end of the night, but I cannot keep track of everyone at every time. If Ella seems sure, I have no reasons to doubt her. Okay. I think that's all we could ask him for now. I know we could always come back with more questions. See ya!